Welcome along to another episode of Beyond the Clinic. I am really excited to chat to you today with my guest, Brittyn Coleman. Now, Brittyn is a dietitian like me, but from across the pond in the US, and she is also known as the Autism dietitian. Brittyn and I have crossed paths a few times, actually. We both work in the field of paediatric picky eating, fussy eating, and we both also have businesses that extend beyond the traditional clinic model, which is what I am all about, as you well know. So Brittyn's going to talk to us a little bit about her business journey, about how she pivoted from various different business models, getting burnt out each time until she found her niche, which is a membership site. And by the time you get to the end of this episode, you will be absolutely inspired about perhaps thinking of a membership site for your own. I'm going to leave it there, but do hang around and listen to this interview because you are going to learn so much. So welcome, Brittyn. Thanks so much for coming on to the podcast today.
Thanks. I'm really excited for our conversation. You were just on my podcast where we talked all about picky eating, and now it's fun to flip the conversation and talk more about our businesses as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely awesome. So do you want to kick off by just introducing yourself, letting everybody know who you are, what you do, and I guess a little bit about your business journey? What does that actually look like as it stands today?
Yeah, my name is Brittyn Coleman. Like you said, I specialize in nutrition for kids on the autism spectrum, and it's a very niche area, and my brother's autistic, and so that's the reason that I've gone into this area and why I specialize. And in the beginning of this whole journey, I wanted to do everything when it came to autism, but believe it or not, there's such a wide net when it comes to nutrition for autism. We have people who are doing more of the biomedical side of things and lab testing and one-on-one. And I started off that way, and I didn't love it. And I just felt really stressed out by it. I was burned out by it. And I'll talk through, because I feel like I've changed my business so many times, and I just got burned out in new ways every single time. And I'm finally in a place where I'm actually not feeling burned out for the first time, which is really exciting. But I moved into the picky eating, selective eating space. And because that was something I really realized that I loved when I was counseling my clients. And then I was like, I think that I can take just this part full time. And so pivoted my practice to selective eating for autism back in, I think, 2020, and then have just rolled with it ever since. But I started my private practice in 2017. I was pretty fresh out of grad school, and everyone says that you need a few years while you're in clinical, and I heard that as well. And I was in grad school, I was working part-time at a hospital, and then I found a role for an outpatient position for dietitians to work. It was like an outpatient clinic for kids with developmental disabilities. And so I was working alongside OTs and speech therapists. It was awesome, but it was so part-time. I think I was working Thursdays maybe, and that was it. Maybe it was in half days on Thursdays. They just didn't have the caseload that I needed. And so I was like, I think I'm just going to start my private practice now. I'm just going to have it there, kind of work on it as I go. But I never took it really seriously. And it was a good thing that I had opened that up, because that clinic that I was working for ended up going under. And all of my clients that were there, I had a good number of clients, even though I was just going every, Thursday, needed somewhere to go. And so it was really lucky that I was like, oh, just come on into my private practice. So it was a really easy transition. Of course, not everyone transferred over, but it was a nice little kickoff, and I was glad that I had it there for myself. But it's funny to think, I know we'll talk so much more about where my practice is now. At the time I was living in Oklahoma, I had an in-person office. I was taking insurance exclusively and seeing people one-on-one, and that couldn't be more opposite than what I do right now. I am so glad I look back at that girl who was doing it scared, in her private practice and just doing what she could. And I'm so proud of her for just starting. But I wish I could have shown her like, okay, this is what this is going to look like in 6-7 years from now, which is where I
Yeah.
am now, which I'm not done, but is just really neat to reflect back on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's not an uncommon path, is it, to start in clinical practice? For us in the UK, it's obviously in the NHS, but it could be a private practice. And then after a few years, like you mentioned, you burn out, you get to a point where you reach that threshold, don't you? Because you've only got a certain number of hours in the day. And as our businesses grow, we reach that threshold, don't we? And we can't do any more. And I think because of the nature we have as carers of people who really want to help everybody, it's actually really hard to say no and turn people away, isn't it? So that burnout does happen. It's a real thing. So tell us a little bit about your business now then, and how that's different and how it contrasts to where you were back then.
Yeah, so now I run a membership site and support parents who have kids on the autism spectrum to help their kids expand their diet. As of right now, we have over 600 members, and I fully support them. I do the membership like full time. And that actually just changed probably about 6 months ago. I decided to take the membership full time. And I mean that I don't work with clients one-on-one anymore. I did group coaching in between one-on-one and membership. Don't do that anymore. So now I just run a practice through my membership, and I also have a podcast. I do social media. I do collaborations with brands. So it's just a completely different, like it doesn't even look relatively the same.
Yeah.
But in between, where I was going with that is I started out with seeing people one-on-one, and in Oklahoma, taking insurance. I know you're in the UK, so getting a grasp on the different states, but in Oklahoma, you have to take insurance. You don't have to, but most people expect you to. And so I was stuck in this model. Now, the cost of living in Oklahoma is like definitely not the highest in the United States. I moved to San Francisco, California, after I got married, and that is one of the most expensive cities in the US, I'm sure, in the world. It's just so expensive, and I was still taking insurance. I did switch to telehealth, so that was fantastic. At the time, it was very new to all of us to switch into telehealth, and it went well, thankfully. But I just realized I couldn't afford living in San Francisco if I was going to continue doing insurance. So I switched over to the private model, but I was having a hard time booking clients. And then I worked with a business coach who really helped me up level in the one-on-one space. I had a 6-month program and a 3-month program, and I really took off. And I filled my private practice so full that I was so tired by the end of the day. I was just seeing everyone one-on-one, back to back every day. And I was just like, I hate this. I was making a lot of money doing that, but I was just so tired. And eventually I started working with another business coach who helped me switch into the group model. And that really helped for a while because I was seeing like I'd grown enough on social media, I could switch to that one-to-many. And so I would have group coaching programs with about 10 parents, coach them for 8 weeks over expanding their child's diet, helping with their nutrition. And I did that for a few years, and it was going really well too. I was making even more money. While I was doing that, I was like, I want to start a membership because when I have kids one day, I want to be able to not be on calls all the time. Even though that group model, it's like I was getting into, you only have one call a week, or at least my groups did. And I ran a few groups at a time. And I was just like, but I hate like being stuck to my calendar. Like every Tuesday at 10, I'm on this call and there's no flexibility with it. And so I started my membership, and it was just like a side hustle. People in my group got access to it. It was $9.99 when I launched it. And I just had it for a few years, didn't really take it seriously, but like contributed to it often. And then, I decided I got pregnant, and then I was like, okay, this group model is not going to work out. So I did a hybrid between online courses and membership. So I'd never fully committed to my membership, and I wish I would have a long time ago. I just didn't think that it could be it could be my full-time gig, I
Yeah,
guess.
your full-time thing.
Yeah.
So what, just for those people who might not be familiar with memberships, what does it look like? What's inside your membership?
Yeah. So when it first started, it was called the Autism Nutrition Library. And all it was basically I had a few different contractors and students who would help me, and we would research a certain topic
Mhm.
and we would put it into the library as like a note. So like we would have notes on diets and foods and nutrients and symptoms. And it was great for what it was. However, we were like churning out content every single week, and it was so exhausting. And it just didn't feel like it was paying off for the amount of work that I was putting into it. I was like,
Yeah.
I was so tired from the content. So that was my biggest problem with it, is that it was just it was a good amount of work.
Time. So, and when you say notes, was it written stuff that you were doing, you were producing? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like it's like the Spark Notes. So if somebody was like, oh, should my child be eating apples? Be like, okay, this is why apples are beneficial. This is the research we have on autism and apples. Here's how you can integrate it if your child's a picky eater, like the different ways. So
Mm.
it was really cool. And then we had the forum that people could ask questions in as well, but it was pretty quiet in the forum. And then because I was so burned out by that, I had just put myself into burnout in so many different ways. I was like, okay, what does my clientele really need? And a lot of time what they're looking for is support with picky eating. And all we had was like a note on picky eating in the library. And they're wanting community. And I feel like I'm failing at both of those things in my membership. And so this past November of 2023, I completely relaunched my membership under a new name. We structured everything differently to where the library is now just a feature and we don't regularly contribute to it. We add new research or update where needed, but it's a feature and it's like a complete library. The main deal now is the community. I host live Q&As. I bring in guest speakers. We do like community events where moms can come and meet up and like just have a second to chat with other moms who really get it, who also have autistic children. And it has been, I doubled my membership at least within the past 6 months.
Awesome. That's
And
brilliant.
thank you. It was just pivoting to
Yeah.
really thinking, okay, what do my people really need? And
Yes.
how can I properly give
Yeah.
that to them?
Absolutely. And I was just thinking that as you were saying that I harp on all the time to my clients about market research. And I think they're probably sick to death about me talking about market research and what does your ideal client want? And actually what they want isn't often what they need or what we want to give them. It's what do they specifically want?
Yeah.
So is that what you did? You went out to the people that you had and just found out exactly what it was that they wanted and then created something to meet that demand.
Yeah, I would I like send out quite a few surveys to all the members, people who had canceled, asking them, what would have made you stay? What are you looking for? Rate these different features. And it really came back. Community was number one for sure. Live calls was number two. And I was like, I don't host either of those really in my current membership. So it's no wonder I have such a high churn rate. And so I changed platforms. I completely shifted everything. And it's just funny thinking of like how this membership looks versus the Autism Nutrition Library, even though it still has that in there. It's night and day.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned also that your people wanted more information about picky eating. So did you have to create like resources around that to supplement what was in the library?
Yeah, and I've learned too, since I relaunched my membership, have learned actually how to support them even better than that. So what I started doing when they joined the membership in the beginning, I had this roadmap for them to go through, and everybody went through the same roadmap. So it was like this long PDF and it was fillable, and they would go in through each of the steps, and I had videos that would walk them through it, just like a mini online course. And it had a section on picky eating, but there were so many questions still coming through that I was like, man, I must have not gone in depth enough. And my churn rate was better than it had been, but it was still not where I wanted it to be. And so then I was like, I was listening in on a summit about memberships, and it was like, the biggest thing that you can do for retention is have individualized roadmaps. And so I was like, that's what I'm doing wrong. So I took a poll between all of the people who are in my membership. What is your biggest nutrition struggle? And it really came down to three things. The top, probably 75% of my membership is picky eating. The second one was gut issues. Constipation is a major issue with my clientele. And then number three was like, I don't necessarily have like picky eating or gut issues, but I'm trying to work on like enhancing my child's nutrition. Like, what diet should they be following? Should they be taking supplements? Should they be doing lab testing? Like this higher level. And so what I ended up doing was creating a roadmap for each one of those, which is now not this long PDF, but it's online, like mini online course that they go through. And when they join, they take a quiz, and based on the results of that quiz, it puts them into one of those roadmaps. So now people feel a huge conversation in the collective, is my membership's called the Nourishing Autism Collective, is them working on their personal roadmap. And so they're like, I'm halfway through my roadmap. I've learned this and this. What do I do here? And I'm like, okay, this is what you have to look forward to. Or I can individualize what they're working on to their child and what they've already learned. But yeah, that definitely helped my churn rate, because people feel they feel very seen, and they know that what they're struggling with, they're getting very specific support on. That's one way.
Personalization to them. Yeah. And do you offer, you said about people wanted the community aspect, so do you offer like live calls where they can come and have questions answered, and so you have that alongside things?
Exactly. I use a platform called Circle, and I love Circle. I could talk your ear off about it because I love it so much. Circle invited me to come into their membership of creators actually in about an hour and like showcase my membership inside of Circle. But they're great. My community is so active. I think that speaks to both their platform, but also my people are just craving community. They feel so isolated and alone. Yes, they have the support from each other. Oftentimes I see threads going on and I'm like, I don't even need to hop in here because they've got it. They're just supporting each other. But yes, inside Circle, you can host like different channels like you can in Slack, but then you can also host events, and it sets up a whole calendar. So we host monthly Q&As, and then I just tested out one of my contractor dietitians doing a Q&A yesterday, just so I can also have more space and flexibility. And she did a great job and they loved it. And there was a great turnout. I also have a community coordinator who is a past client of mine who has two autistic girls. And she takes the role of connecting parents to other parents and like making sure they feel supported in their journey. She doesn't do the nutrition side. She just does the community side. And she hosts monthly calls. We call them our monthly Mama Mingles. And we had one this past Monday, and just provides people a time. We don't record those. We have replays for the other ones, but for those, it's just a time to come and chat about what's on your mind, and it doesn't have to be nutrition. And then, like I said, I have guest workshops where people come in, like speech therapist, occupational therapist, and it's mutually beneficial for everyone, for my clientele to learn, and then potentially to get new people on their email list or new followers or a new client, whatever that means.
Brilliant. That's great. So it's a win for everybody there, isn't it? Yeah. And how has that impacted you in terms of your time? And I'm assuming you're no longer burnt out. And you've also mentioned having a little one as well. How is that in terms of your life?
Yeah, I have a 20-month-old and I'm due in October and with our second. And
Oh, congratulations.
thank you. We're so excited. And I just remember when I was doing group coaching and I was like, I really need to put more into my membership. I need to shift. And when I was dreaming of like making the shift into my membership, it was really so that I could have this flexibility with my kids. And I remember thinking back in 2017 when I started this, I was like, it's great for me to have flexibility when I become a mom because I want to be able to do that. But I kept putting myself in these like traps, like
Yeah.
where I was so stuck in my business. And I was able to I took, I think 12 weeks with my son and I was still working
Yeah.
a little bit. But this time I'm really not stressed about it because I have people who are helping me on the inside. It really runs itself. I'll still pop in there because I can answer questions and support my families typically in 30 to 60 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's all I do that day. And then I like get to do other stuff and be with my son when he's not in daycare and not
Yeah.
stress about it. So
Amazing.
I
That
really
is,
love that.
yeah, that is the dream, isn't it? When you've got a product that runs itself, essentially. That's what you're talking about. You've got this amazing community who talk to each other and support each other, and you've got your co-coaches who are helping as well. You've bought yourself freedom. You've created a business that's it's allowed you to have that freedom.
Definitely.
So
And I was
yeah,
just sharing before we hopped on this call too. We moved last week and my son was out of daycare. And I said so many times to my husband, thank God I changed my business. Cause could you imagine like me trying to work right now? And yeah, he was completely out of school that whole week. And we like moved all of our stuff out of our house during renovations. And I just, I didn't have to really think about work. Like it was going on at night. I would pop in and answer questions for maybe like 20 to 30 minutes. And I never felt like I was behind. Now, like the whole thing on like growing your business, working outside, working on it and not in it. Last week was that only work in it sort of week where I was just
yeah,
like, we're just keeping things going. But my members never felt that I was busy or that I like was moving or whatever it was. They never saw any of that. Now my social media was a little quiet, but it
yeah,
was
fair enough.
nice. Well, that doesn't matter. That's okay. Like I'm
Yeah,
focusing on supporting my people.
your clients. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Amazing. That's such an inspiring story. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
I've got 5 quick fire questions
Yeah,
to end with, if that's okay.
absolutely. Let's do it.
Great. So, number 1, best bit of your working day.
Ooh, best bit of my working day. I do really love my membership. I love hopping in there. And so that's one of my favorite things to do is hop in and actually work on my membership.
Brilliant. I love that. Number 2, why do you do what you do?
To support families like mine who didn't have the resources to, with my brother, he was an extremely selective eater. We didn't have these kind of resources in the 90s to be able to support them and help them feel understood and validated and supported and to help their kids feel their best so that they can do better in all areas of life.
Yeah, it's a real passion project as well as a business, isn't it?
For sure.
Yeah, brilliant. Question 3, tech, love it or hate it?
I love it. Oh, I love it.
Me too. Oh, me too. There's so much stuff out there now that just makes life easier and you don't have to work as much. Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I love trying out new products and new apps. It's so fun. So yeah, count me in on that.
Yeah, brilliant. Question 4, how do you stay motivated?
I really do love what I do. I think not feeling so tired all the time helps me keep going. But I also think the motivation for me, I love a challenge. And so one thing that I've had to say, okay, I need to sit still for a second, but I love to challenge myself and come up with new products and new ideas. And so I think with the membership, I'm able to focus all of my like need for like new challenges for new features instead of like completely new products where I'm trying to like pivot my business model all the time. But yeah, I love doing that. But of course, my son is a huge motivator of mine. And then
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. Great. And then final question, what's one thing that you know now that you wish you could tell your former self when just starting out in business?
I think it's okay that it's a hustle in the beginning. I think that consistency really pays off. And I
Mhm.
also think really working hard to understand who you're serving and
Yeah.
what they want, and not thinking about it from, oh, what new product can I put out or what do I think they need? Really staying true to what your people need is going to help you get so much closer to what is going to be successful than just trying to follow like the traditional dietitian
Yeah.
path. Another thing I would say is just take the leap to do it. If you're considering doing a business, I'm so glad I started when I did. And I was so scared and I was so young and so fresh. I am just glad that I got pushed into it, honestly, when that other company went out, but I at
Yeah.
least had started. And I wish I would have felt more confident in that. And the cool thing is like now a lot of dietitians are going into private practice and they're fantastic supports. I think you and I actually met through Erica Jolson, and
You did?
I remember when her like unconventional RD Facebook group started, and I was like,
Yeah.
thank God. So there are resources out there and you can really scale a business and like hop into this. You just have to do it scared in the beginning too.
Yeah, you're so right. And yeah, I was exactly the same when I decided that I wanted to do something different as a dietitian. There was nobody in the UK doing it,
Mhm.
absolutely nobody. And it was really scary. And I didn't really know what to do. And when I found Erica, I was like, what you got? And she was like, hang on a minute, hang on a minute. And it was before she had her SEO course. But I think I was one of the first people who did that course because I was like, I
Yeah,
need to learn how to do this. So yeah, absolutely.
exactly. Me too. I was one
Yeah.
of the early buyers of her course just because it was like you were the person who's doing things differently right now and actually pulling together these other dietitians. Yeah, I'm hopeful. I never learned anything about private practice in school. I'm hopeful that's something that trickles down. And I speak to my alma mater almost every year about private practice and trying to help dietitians realize that we can go into other areas and your
Yeah.
business can look like a membership model. It can look like being an influencer. It can look like running a really successful and profitable blog. And
Yes.
I think we just don't see that. We get stuck in the traditional dietitian
Yes.
headspace.
Model. Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right. Amazing. I've absolutely loved this conversation. It's been absolutely inspirational. I have a membership which I have neglected and I use it as a downsell for my main program, but you've inspired me to actually sit down and have a look at what can I do to improve it, and maybe I'll get a little bit more interest in that as well. So thank you so much for being an inspiration.
Thanks, Sarah. I really appreciate being here.
And just before you go, where can people connect with you?
Autism Dietitian on Instagram is a great place to connect. And I do have a freebie for practitioners as well that I'm happy to share. It's a
Yeah,
nutrition toolkit for autism made entirely for practitioners. And I'll share the link with you, Sarah, so that you could share it in the show notes as well.
will do. That's brilliant. Thanks ever so much.
Of course. Thank you.
Take care now. Bye.